Let me introduce William Pate, a very engaged member of our club. William's going to be leading our panel discussion here with several distinguished chefs. Thank you for being so engaged and being such a big part of our club. We appreciate it. As president and CEO of the Atlanta Convention and Visitors Bureau, William is responsible for maintaining tourism as one of the city's top economic drivers. The industry brought 50 million visitors to Metro Atlanta in 2023, generating a record high of $18 billion in visitor spending and providing approximately 310,000 jobs. Listen to all these awards and recognitions. He has been named one of Atlanta's 500 most powerful leaders by Atlanta Magazine several times. The American Marketing Association's Atlanta chapter gave him its Lifetime Achievement Award. Atlanta Business League previously named him Herman J. Russell CEO of the Year. Georgia Trend magazine has included Pate on its list of notable Georgians. Atlanta Business Chronicle has honored Pate multiple times as one of Atlanta's 50 most admired CEOs and has named him to its 100 most influential Atlantans every year since 2009. What's left? Welcome and thank you for your leadership. Appreciate you, pal.
What's left is my wife would love to come up for a rebuttal, but we don't allow her to do that. So, we have a great program for you today. We're going to talk about restaurants here in the city and across the state, and particularly about Michelin. So I'd like to bring up the panelists. Aaron Phillips, he's the executive chef at Michelin-starred Lazy Betty. Aaron brings a wealth of experience from some of the most renowned kitchens in the country, including Les Bernardines, Jean-Georges, the Marc Restaurant, and the Four Seasons Hotel. At Lazy Betty, he's helped implement an innovative service model that includes a 20% service fee to ensure fair wages across his entire team. Fred Castellucci, the CEO of Castellucci Hospitality Group. Fred started his journey in restaurant kitchens before studying hospitality management at Cornell University. Since taking the reins in 2007, he's transformed his family's single restaurant into a multi-unit, multi-state group. This includes Michelin-starred Mujo, the Iberian Pig, Cooks and Soldiers, Double Zero, and Sugo. Scott Bierman is the Vice President of Government Affairs at the Georgia Restaurant Association. A 2011 graduate of Ole Miss, Scott spent 5 years in Washington, D.C., working for former U.S. Congressman Scott Rogel. In his current role, Scott leads the Government Affairs Department, advocating for the restaurant industry through legislative and regulatory reforms. So, Scott, I'm going to start with you before we get into the Michelin story. Obviously, restaurants really got hammered during COVID. We've got that in the rearview mirror now. Why don't you talk a little bit about how the industry's recovered?
Yeah, no, you're exactly right. Restaurants, with a lot of industries, so I don't want to kind of make it sound like restaurants were the only ones hit by COVID. We all know what the impact was there. But man, our restaurants were hit hard, and they were, we all, lost our neighborhood restaurant. We all had a restaurant we loved that we no longer have in our lives anymore because it was closed for one reason or another, that, from the various negative things that came out of COVID. We were in 2019 looking at a 2020 where we're going to have over 20,000 restaurants in the state of Georgia, hiring roughly 490,000 Georgians, which would put us as the second largest private sector employer in the state behind agriculture. Due to COVID, that number fell, it plummeted. Luckily, we're back. We're kind of back on that same trajectory. We're up at 24,000 restaurants across the state, hiring over 500,000 Georgians all over. So we're back, but there's still those tentacles that came from COVID that we're still dealing with. Inflation is out there. The staffing shortages of the 2021-22, we're still kind of feeling some of that on this end. Supply chain issues that were really, I'm sure the chefs here could speak about that were really an issue in 2021, 2022. Again, easing off a little bit, but still feeling that pain some. So we're coming back. We're seeing those numbers. We're seeing that money coming back into the economy. Hopefully, we're going to continue that upward trajectory, but again, just a little hiccup in the road from 2020. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you. Just a couple words about Michelin. For those of you who aren't familiar, Michelin is internationally known. There are 7 cities in the United States that are Michelin cities. We just had the new announcement of Michelin restaurants a few weeks ago. We now have 9 restaurants that have a star, and we have 62 restaurants in total that were recognized by the Michelin Guide. And we're going to talk a lot about what it means to be a Michelin restaurant here today, but I think it's also important to note that across the restaurant industry here in Atlanta, business is up about 12% since we engaged in the Michelin Guide. So it really has lifted our entire culinary industry across the city. ACVB has that deal. It's a 3-year deal, so we're in the second year of a 3-year deal, but of course we plan to continue that. So Aaron, why don't you start by telling us a little bit about what makes Lazy Betty so special?
Lazy Betty.
Hello?
Lazy Betty is a special restaurant. What really makes Lazy Betty special is the staff that runs it. Most of the people that have been working there since we opened. And so getting to lead a team that's sunk their teeth so hard into the program is something that's truly special. The Michelin recognition is amazing, but really getting to go to work every day with those wonderful individuals is the true blessing of the job.
Fred, you want to tell us a little bit about the journey from Mujo?
Yeah, certainly.
That one does work.
Yeah, this one works for sure. So Mujo really is a product of the pandemic. So Mujo and what we do there is very unique. It's a small restaurant. It's 15 seats. It's very intimate. It's omakase sushi. It's sushi made right in front of you, one bite at a time, in the edamame style, which uses various techniques, aging and bring out the umami flavor in each particular dish.
Does this one work? Oh, here you go. Here we go. Try it again. No worries. But the original idea for Mujo, I was just really a passionate consumer of this product. I felt like the minimalism of 2 ingredients was something that was really exceptional. I'd done a lot of these dining experiences at various places, and you go to the 3 Michelin star places in New York or Paris or any of these various places, and you're consuming hundreds if not thousands of ingredients so over the course of a really long meal, and it became like this thing my wife and I didn't really love doing so much anymore, and the minimalism of that experience really spoke to us, and so we just kind of started going to these places, and then Jay Trent, who's my business partner and chef in the restaurant, we met in New York and we kind of hit it off, and he actually had no desire really to be in Atlanta. I still don't think he has a lot of desire to be here, but it's growing on him. But we had kind of hatched this plan to do a pop-up here in Atlanta in April of 2020, and he was gonna come in, and we were gonna do an 8-seat, for a weekend, basically 3 nights, and to do something fun. And then obviously March 2020 hit, and we had already kind of bought the stuff for the pop-up, and we're like, oh, what are we gonna do now? So I was like, why don't you come down here anyway, and we'll do a takeout version of this pop-up restaurant. And at the time, we had responded to COVID differently. We didn't shut any of our restaurants down. We pivoted immediately to takeout, which we had never done at any of the restaurants. We didn't have takeout menus or programs, and we didn't lay off our staff, and we basically were like, we're going to figure this out day one and not stop. But big problem was we didn't have any revenue really at some of the restaurants, so it's hard to pay employees when there's no revenue. So this was kind of one of my ideas, just to generate additional revenue through one of the existing restaurants. And we launched the first night. My wife was actually in the hospital with one of our kids, she was pregnant with one of our kids, and so at the time I couldn't even visit in the hospital either at the time, and we launched, and she was on a laptop in the hospital launching the pop-up because it was online. That's what she does for our company, and but it was just like a tremendous outpouring of support for the pop-up, and then we were like, all right, let's make this a reality. So then we signed a lease and opened in
beginning of 2022, which was, again, back to the pandemic. Omicron was just exploding at the time. So then we were back in masks, and I'm like, oh shit, this is going to be a total failure. Because, like, you're right in front of people with your hands making the food, one bite at a time. But I remember sitting there, I was working friends and family, and some of you guys were actually at that event. And the press release went out, and legitimately within hours, we had sold out 3 months of reservations. It was just like it probably was like, to me, the moment the pandemic ended in my mind. I was like, we are going to be totally fine. And this is awesome. It's like a career moment for us. And so, and that actually led to a conversation with William. And we talked, we really have William to thank for bringing the Michelin Guide here. And it's been tremendous for the city and the whole ecosystem. And I can go on and on about how awesome it is, but I just want to thank you for doing what you did to make this happen.
Thank you. And remember, this is the Atlanta Rotary Club, and everybody loves living in Atlanta and being in Atlanta. So, okay.
I'm selling it, man. Don't worry, I'm selling it.
Scott, why don't you talk a little bit about what being a Michelin city means to the restaurant community, both here in the state and across the city?
Now that we're down to Mike, we'll have to pass these around. Yeah, Michelin is it's been a big deal for our folks. It's almost like a rising tide, kind of lifts all boats things. We at the Restaurant Association, we have counterparts all across the country, and when we get together with our folks from Illinois, particularly, they like to say that they have the most Michelin stars per capita than anybody else in the country. And so when we can be included in that conversation of Atlanta's on the way up, Atlanta's coming. It's something to be proud of. It's something that, again, you come to a city like this. It's a gorgeous city. Thanks to William, we got a lot of great things coming up. People want to come here and spend money and eat at awesome restaurants. And when you sell out 3 months in advance, then hey, it's going to open the door for someone else. And so, being associated with folks like this, it really helps everybody across the board. And it's not just the folks who get stars. The folks who get stars are incredible. If you look at the Bib Gourmand, the folks who get recommendations that are a little more budget friendly, you may have a family coming in. Now they look at the Michelin Guide and go, I can't get into the 1 star, but you know what? This Bib Gourmand looks really great, and that's something else we can get involved in. So it really provides a really good highlight for other parts of the industry as well. So, what these guys are doing is incredible, but again, opens up for other folks and really shines that light and can put you in the conversation again with Paris, New York, Chicago, really outstanding dining locations across the world.
So, Aaron, you have a fantastic restaurant, and when you start that restaurant and we announce that we're going to be a Michelin city, do you now say, hey, we want to get a Michelin star? What is the thought process there? Are there things you have to do different, or do you just keep doing what you're doing and hope Michelin finds you?
So we definitely were excited when we heard that Atlanta was going to get reviewed by the Michelin Guide. Of course, we wanted to be a part of that program, and our goal is always to be the best. And with the respect that the Michelin sort of portrays, it's something that we definitely wanted. But I would say that we are in the effort business, not necessarily the results business. So from how do we function, we sort of just did what got us there in the first place. So we stayed true to our roots, our values, how we work, how we treat each other, and the way we go about bringing a product to Atlanta. And the results were what they were.
I was there the first time you all got your star. Talk a little bit about the excitement that ran through your team and through the restaurant and just what that meant to get that recognition.
Well, as soon as you just asked me that question, I remember for myself, I felt like I just got drafted into the NFL. I'm like 5'6", 180.
That would be a heck of a draft. What round were you drafted?
Yeah, I was never going to get drafted in the NFL, but if it was going to have a feeling what it would feel like, I think that's what it would be similar to. And the excitement when I got to bring the star back into the restaurant and just like hold it above my head and the whole staff was just going insane. It was such an incredible experience. And there was a watch party at Lazy Betty while the actual ceremony was going on, because not everybody could come with us. And I saw videos of the watch party, and it was just crazy. Our chef de cuisine, Austin Getzman, he's big into Formula One, and he had a champagne bottle, and he was just spraying it all over the place, just going awesome. Nuts. So it was really cool, really exciting, and more than anything, being able to bring that home to our staff is what it was all about.
Awesome. How about you, Fred? When y'all were putting Mujo together, were you thinking, hey, this could be special, this could be a Michelin star?
Well, I mean, I think we were initially just trying to create something unique that would add meaningfully to what was happening in the Atlanta dining community. And the Michelin thing is just was so fortuitous, because we just opened the restaurant, and doing something at that level at that time, is the most expensive restaurant in Atlanta. And I was really concerned. I was like, this may not work. I mean, it's like a big risk. And as soon as obviously we knew we had guests in the building, because we had that tremendous outpouring. But it almost actually increased the pressure a little bit for us, because we were like, well, we're already doing great here. If we don't get a Michelin star, now we might be effed, because then you're the most expensive restaurant in Atlanta that doesn't have a Michelin star. That's kind of a problem, right? So I think the pressure, and especially Jordan and my partner, I mean, the days leading up to it were, stressful for sure. But as soon as we saw the list of mentions and they went through and they hit M and then they went to S, we were like, oh, thank God, it's happening. So, and then we had it. We had a big time. I think everybody that was there was hungover for many days after that. So it was a great time, and great for the city. And to the former point about the Bib Gourmand, a friend of mine owns Table and Main out in Roswell. They just got recognized in the guide this year for the first time, and their sales have just exploded overnight. They're already a successful restaurant, but this is it's taken them to a whole new level. So to see that there's even potential for that to be happening on an annual basis is really phenomenal.
So Aaron, the Michelin folks are in town for about 4 months. When they're in town, and they're in town, you don't know when they're coming, but they're in town, are you managing the restaurant differently, or are you thinking about that?
No.
Okay, thanks. I only have a couple more questions.
So, we really take pride in what we do, and we focus on each individual guest experience as closely as we can. And I can honestly say that, while we know that they're in town and we know there's going to be inspectors, we treat every guest like they're a VIP. It's sort of and you've heard people say it all the time. It's it's what they eat and it's what they drink, but it's truly how you make them feel. And so that hospitality runs deep throughout our program, from the moment you make their reservation till the moment that they leave our establishment. And so, again, back to the effort and results thing, we just continue to put in the daily effort, and we got to leave the results up to whatever they are, because otherwise we'd be I feel almost focusing on the wrong thing and being disingenuous. So we try to stay true to who we are and our values.
Awesome. Treat every customer like a VIP. As a marketing guy, that's gold. I like that.
Yeah, that's how we do it.
Fred, you have multiple restaurants. Is your goal to get a star for all of them, or are there some restaurants that really are more likely to get stars and some are Bib Gourmands, or even just some are just great restaurants?
Yeah, I mean, certainly we actually really only think about Michelin for that one concept, because that's what it's not designed for that, but that's just the level of what we do there. Everything else is designed for a different customer and the way we create concepts and want to bring something meaningful to the city of Atlanta, whatever that cuisine is. To me, it's not necessarily about the recognition. So we really do try to, even with Mujo, while the recognition is nice, we didn't open that restaurant to get a Michelin star. Like, we really opened it to try to do something meaningful, to contribute to the dining community in Atlanta. And that's really what I get excited about, is doing like stuff that is unique and different, because, Atlanta doesn't need another, I don't know, fried chicken restaurant at this point. And so we can do stuff that kind of like helps put us on that level of some of those other places we talked about, like New York and Chicago and Paris and places like that. So that's what gets me excited. But I will say, the next restaurant that we're working on is of that like Michelin caliber, and it has given me certainly the confidence to go out there and take maybe a bigger swing at something that would be highly, highly risky previously to Michelin coming, knowing that if we do if we execute on what we want to do, then that will be part of the equation. And we know we can bring something really ambitious. And so I think in a lot of ways, that's what's the long tail of Michelin for our whole community, is that it emboldens people like us to go out there and do more ambitious stuff, and hopefully raise the whole level. And then also the talent that attracts, the people, from New York and these places that want to move here, because they know the recognition is possible and that people are doing more and more ambitious, creative stuff. And then that filters down to every level of the dining experience. So not just the tasting menu, omakase type places, but every level below that, which is tremendously impactful.
So, Scott, Texas, so you can be a Michelin city or you can be a Michelin state. Texas is a Michelin state. And they just had their announcement a couple of weeks ago. And I just have to point out, since we compete with Dallas all the time in business, that they only got one restaurant that got a star. So that's worth clapping for. Is there something different about our ecosystem, our restaurant ecosystem here? I don't want you to compare the two, because we don't want to do that, but yeah. I mean, obviously we have a great culinary scene here, and relative to other parts of the country, we seem to do very well. What do you think about the Texas situation?
Yeah, Texas is interesting. Austin got 7 stars, Houston got 6, and Dallas got 1. So there's something there. They're not, they were all over the state. There's something there. I've been to Dallas a handful of times, been to some great restaurants over there. That they only got 1 star is curious. I think it does speak more towards maybe what we do better than what Dallas does, not to compare like you said, but the numbers are the numbers. But let me be a little more diverse over here. Let me a little less reliance on chain and kind of big brands in the city. You read some of the online kind of post game shows over there from Dallas, and they kind of point to those facts and say, well, are we too reliant on steakhouses and on chain brands? I don't know. I don't know. It's like a football game. You can have the same referees in 2 games and get 2 different outcomes on the same call. So a lot of speculation here, but it is curious. You kind of look at, they only got 1. Some other cities kind of the same size. Even Austin is much smaller.
Austin did, yeah.
Yeah, Austin got 7. Gosh, you just got to think that there's something there that maybe they're not, the scene over there is just not supporting the level of restaurant. Not to say there aren't great restaurants there, because there are, but maybe not to the same level that we are here in Atlanta.
I mean, I'd say one of the things that we're really blessed with here is we have a lot of chef-driven restaurants, which gives us a lot more creativity. We support a lot of different cultures, and we bring a lot of those flavors. Fred was talking about, you can only have so many chicken restaurants and things like that in town. So I think a lot of the credit goes to the great chefs that we have here in the city. So Aaron, no good deed goes unpunished. So you get a star. Now you got to keep the star. Now you've had a star for 2 years in a row. You got to keep it for the 3rd year. Talk a little bit about, is there pressure there? I mean, obviously you don't want to fall back. Talk a little bit about what that's like.
Yeah, the pressure's there for sure. What does it feel like? Well, imagine
the NFL draft. You had that. That was really good.
So I've tried to explain it to somebody before, and I don't know if this is the right platform, but I'll go for it anyways. It's like, you marry the woman of your dreams, or man, and Every year, though, they get to decide whether or not they want to stay married to you.
Now I'm really glad my wife isn't here.
Yeah, so I don't want to say it's a blessing and a curse, but it's certainly exciting. It's exciting. It's exciting for the city. It's exciting for, everybody that's involved. I think it's just a good thing overall, and we're just happy to be a part of the program, as long as they'll have us.
That's great. Now, Fred, your wife's home with 4 kids, so you may want to use a different metaphor. However,
I've got nothing to add to that.
This is your second year as well, getting a star. So, same kind of question. Talk a little bit about what that means inside the restaurant as y'all, as your staff is working and thinking about what they're going to get done through the day. Talk a little bit about sustaining that level of service and food.
Yeah, so we kind of look at it the same in all of our businesses. We focus on the guest experience and the guest that's in our seat every single night, and we try to just block out the noise on everything else. And then we try to measure that as much as we possibly can, like the guest, trying to get as much data on the guest experience as we possibly can to ensure that we're hitting that the highest possible level. And so for us, that's really what we drive everyone on that, and we bonus people on it and compensate such that everyone in the organization is just focused on that, and so Michelin's obviously great, but if we do our job with the guests in the seat every night that we are consistently doing, we know that will be there at the end. So we try not to even worry too much about it and just focus on the one thing we can control every single day, every single person in the seat.
You guys are both eating in multiple star restaurants, so you each have a star. What do you think it takes to get to be a 2 or 3 star? I mean, is there a separation there, and what does that look like, Aaron?
Yeah, there definitely is a separation, and again, it's a judgment from another entity. So I wouldn't say that any restaurant in Atlanta is not a Michelin 2-star. I wouldn't say that they are. I think it's definitely up to Michelin Guide how they divvy that up. But I think we're definitely trending in the right direction for that to happen. It's not just the level of ingredients that are used, but it's also a lot about the storytelling and how the product is delivered to the guest. And so eventually, hopefully somebody will achieve 2 Michelin stars, and whoever that is going to be the people that not only have the best food, but have the best service and tell the best story.
That's awesome. Fred, what do you think?
Yeah, that's a great point. I think if you just look at it from international perspective, like for us serving Japanese sushi, there's 5 restaurants in the entire United States that have more than 1. And so there's just a massive chasm between 1 and 2 and 2 and 3. So, we can't really say this is what it's going to take to get to 2, because you go from being like a well-known, regionally known restaurant to being a nationally known restaurant. With 2 and with 3, it's like you're an internationally known restaurant. So it's such a massive difference between 1, 2, and 3. So it's really hard to pinpoint it. But what I can say from, working in it and then being a diner, the Michelin Guide, they say it's about just culinary. Like if you read their, list of what they put on. But have you ever been to a 2 or 3 Michelin star restaurant that wasn't incredibly well appointed with the best plateware and glassware and every single detail and the hospitality and the storytelling and the ingredients? It's a tremendous amount of attention to detail. So I think that's really what it takes to get there, is just that same level. And you're almost like a artistic director at that point. It's your individual taste that they're evaluating on every single one of those decisions that you made. So it's thousands of decisions that you make that lead to the dining experience. And so they're evaluating your taste on all of those thousands of decisions. And so that's what it leads to.
Yeah, I ate in a 3-star restaurant in London. I didn't think it was nearly as good as your 2 restaurants. So
thank you so much.
That's why I was interested in knowing what the delta was there.
It's storytelling, I think, is a good point, actually.
Yeah, that is great. By the way, we're going to take questions from the audience here in just a minute, but one final question, I'll ask all three of you. How has the food scene in Atlanta evolved over time here? We'll just go down the line. You start, Aaron.
Well, the food scene in Atlanta since I've moved here in 2017 has evolved not only even before the Michelin Guide was coming here. I noticed that diners have really yearned for more interesting ingredients. I'll use uni as an example. That's something that, when we first opened Lazy Betty, I was a little nervous about putting on the menu. And then as time's gone on, we've been able to introduce new ingredients to the market that Atlanta's been more receptive about consuming. And also, the dining scene in Atlanta, what I've noticed here compared to other markets is the collaboration efforts that a lot of the chefs have with one another. And I think a lot of that sort of allowed, chefs to learn from one another within the same market and grow together. I know I work all the time with Chef Philippe Haddad right here, and he always invites me to go do events together, and so everybody's just working together to create something greater every single day.
Awesome. That's the Atlanta way. Fred?
Yeah, I mean, it's just, I've been here for a long time, since 2008 now, and I mean, I can think pretty much all the greatest places in Atlanta with, there's some legendary exceptions, but have all been opened in that period of time. And so it just continues to grow and grow, and Michelin is just a part of that. But Michelin also helps with that piece that we talked about earlier, which is just attracting talent, like Aaron, honestly. You came, at a time where a lot of people were starting to think about Atlanta as like a potential place to, bring their talents. And so the more that we can bring people like you to the city, I mean, the sky's the limit.
Scott, one last question. We talked a minute ago about sustainability and food security. Talk a little bit about how the restaurant industry is embracing sustainability, importance of sustainability in their communities.
Yeah, I mean, it's a big issue our folks deal with. We want to make sure as an industry that we're giving back to those communities, or make sure there's a community there to continue to serve. And it's different ways. It's finding eco-friendly packaging that they can give out, finding ways that send folks home. Again, if you're taking food away, send it in a way that you're not causing economic harm or environmental harm through that. But also finding folks in your community who are in need of food, who, hey, we've got, a lot of restaurants have food at the end of the night. How do we make sure it gets to folks who need it in the right ways? How do we give back our time? How do we give back our service? I think COVID, it's kind of going full circle, was a perfect example of that. We had food and we needed to get it to people who all of a sudden didn't have jobs, and we're looking at ways that, hey, how am I going to get my next meal on my table? How am I going to feed my family? So, that's something that's on the front of everybody I talk to. With the Restaurant Association, we're always trying to find ways to make sure our communities, and it's through folks like Aaron and Fred, how our communities are fed, not just at the table, but kind of in a spiritual kind of way and in a community kind of sense.
Yeah, Michelin gives green stars for recognition for sustainability. We have 2 restaurants in Atlanta that received those. Fred, why don't you talk about what you guys are doing, and don't get that look on your face.
I mean, we're flying ingredients from all over the world at extremely high prices. It's not exactly the most sustainable practice, so I don't know that this question is the greatest one to ask me. I mean, there are a lot of processes that we do inside all of our restaurants, but as it relates to Mujo, sustainability is not something we're ever going to get recognized for, unfortunately.
How about you, Aaron? Rescue us.
You're welcome. So we run a zero waste program at Lazy Betty. Basically, every part of the vegetable or protein that doesn't end up on the guest plate, we eat it. So we find a way to work it into some staff meal in some essence or another, because we buy really good food. Now, some of it's local, some of it's flown in, I think local means close, not necessarily good. So, we do fly stuff from everywhere. But just because, we might use a melon baller to get like a small ball out of a radish, but the rest of the radish is still good, so we can shave it then and put it in a salad and serve it to family meal. And that's our biggest outlet. Also, our beverage program utilizes and makes syrups out of a lot of the ingredients that are used on the savory dishes. We then in turn use those same ingredients to create a beverage pairing, which isn't something that we, freely advertise, but it's how we, one, keep the zero waste going, two, control costs, and three, sort of bridge the beverage and the food together, and we can then tell that story as it all comes full circle. But the one thing that I could say is there's sustainability in that essence, but then there's also sustainability of the staff and the people. There's the human sustainability. And so we take a lot of pride in being able to take care of our staff members appropriately, with fair compensation, fair time off, being understanding of their needs, and if they ever need anything, knowing that they can come to us and we'll do what we can to help. So that's what I would say about sustainability.
That's fantastic. Thank you. Does anybody have any questions from the audience?
John, would you mind running that microphone over to the podium? John? Thank you. Stephanie's up first, and then Sharon. Thank you, John.
So when I moved to Atlanta, it was the height of Chef Joel and Gunter Seeger, and going to a gourmet dinner was the experience in and of itself, 2.5 hours. And then we saw that all fall away, and people want more kind of the fast casual and good food. But are you seeing a resurgence of the dining experience as its own form of entertainment? And to your point, the storytelling that will bring back some of those days where we had like Gunter Seeger here in Atlanta?
Well, I think that what people are looking for is the steps of service, and they might, for example, at Lazy Betty, we don't have a dress code, nor do we have white tablecloth. And so what that does is it allows people to experience all the steps of service and food and hospitality that you would get in these previous, lines of restaurants, but without, some of the previous requirements of having to, wear, a suit or, eat on a tablecloth that if you spill some wine, it's going to show up. So it's kind of a little bit relaxed at Lazy Betty in that regard. And I always talk about hitting all the steps of service. And I think people are excited now to taste, many different flavors of food and really experience the personality of the chef through multiple courses. And so we've definitely seen success with that at Lazy Betty.
Yeah, I think for us, one of the things that I get excited about with fine dining is like trying to reduce the barrier between the kitchen and the guest. And so that's the experiential element, I think, is what is driving people to like get that top level experience. And so we've got that back in Atlanta now. And I think that because Michelin is here and then the people that are focused on bringing those great dining experiences are here, it's only going to continue. We're not going the other way again. So I'm excited about the growth.
Yeah, and from a statewide perspective, we're also seeing that in other corners of the state too. Traditionally, I'm from Columbus originally, not a city in Georgia you would think would have this high caliber of gourmet food. But in the past few years, there is a very fine dining restaurant down there, and they are selling out every night because they offer kind of that entertainment experience, if you will, not to put it in the same category as traditional entertainment like Topgolf or Fairway Social, things like that, but where you're, kind of having a fine dining dinner and having the show with it, they're packed. And that's in a city like Columbus, which again, not known, I can say it because I'm from there, not known for a fine dining mecca, if you will.
Sharon, go ahead.
Yes. Love your restaurants, love what you bring to the city. Aaron, my husband, and I will be there Friday night for his birthday.
I'll see you there.
And Fred, I hope your next restaurant will be French. We're really low on French. But my question is actually for Scott. And as you think about, particularly looking ahead to the legislative session, are there state policy issues, either opportunities or threats or things you wish could make happen in the state or things you're trying to stop? I'm not going to ask you about federal, because who knows, but I'm just curious about state policy.
Yeah, no, state policy. I mentioned earlier, we do have a group of folks from around the country that get together, and I got to say, we are incredibly blessed here in Georgia that we do not run into the same issues that folks from around the country have. You see issues that are threatening the livelihoods of restaurants all over the country. We're lucky. One thing that we are looking for in the next few years is, and the governor's come out in kind of support of this, is kind of looking at our premises liability laws and how can we look at reforming those to make them a little more business friendly, while also protecting consumers and protecting individuals who have a right to action. So looking at something like that, which is kind of more business broad community. In terms of restaurants, where, like I said, luckily, there's no wood up here. Knock on wood, we're in a good spot, and we'll stay that way. We have good leadership at the State House, and so we're hoping that can continue on.
Go ahead.
A couple of questions. I transfer here from Texas, so I know that a big reason for that 1-star is diversity. Diversity in the patronage, right? Those who are coming in are going to be familiar or demanding those new ingredients, and our city is full of all different cultures now, especially in the last 20 years. The other thing I was going to say is, one of the things that I think that happens in a lot of your restaurants is the staff. What are you doing with training your staff? Because they tell the part of the story, the part of the really bringing you into almost like the kitchen. And do you see opportunities as a region, not just Atlanta, because we do expand beyond Atlanta, on how we can get that elevated experience with our staffs, because they tell amazing stories and you keep coming back for the food that they give you with their knowledge, and they're helping you elevate that experience. So
I think one of the most important thing is encouraging hospitality as a respected career path. I think is important, and so that to me is about making sure, again, that we're supporting our team members in the building. We're making it a professional environment, compensation, all the things that we can do to bring our industry up as a whole, such that people, young people are like, I want to do that, like I want to be a chef. I want to own a Michelin star restaurant someday. Like those are the things that we want to encourage. And so I think it becomes critical that we protect that career path, and we try to support it. And then on the individual basis, like of the restaurant, the training that we do is tremendously intensive, and a lot of it is promotion from within and developing those skills and talent within the organization. But it is certainly a big challenge.
I would say that when it comes to how the staff is able to deliver that story as a part of that experience, when they're delivering the food, it's really creating and incubating that environment where they can stay true to themselves and be who they really are. And kind of through that process, their genuine personalities can shine. And so I think the best, because I'm not the best at anything at my restaurant, but I do have the best people around me. And so that's really where it starts, is sort of knowing what they need to succeed and then almost staying out of their way and letting them fly.
Keith.
Great job, William, moderating. Good information, gents. I was listening to a podcast recently, about a month ago or so, and the speaker, or the host, who's from Atlanta, mentioned, he got into this whole dating thing and mentioned that for a first date, he gave a number of around $300. That's what it costs to go out on a first date. Generated a ton of conversation. For folks who are saying that's not realistic, that's too much, some saying it's not enough. So I started talking to a lot of the young guys here in the city, asking them, so what do you spend to take a young lady out on a first date? And they're saying far more than $300. that when you spend on the parking, cocktails, dinner, wine with dinner, much more than $300. So I'll ask first, is that number real? Do you think it's too low, too high? And are there alternatives for a good dining experience for a more acceptable price point, maybe?
I mean, well, I'll just give you the range. I mean, we have restaurants in our portfolio that have like our exact average per person spend is like $46 per person. So, that's not $300 for two. Mujo, the average per spend is $410 per person. So that means after tax and tip, it's over $1,000. So obviously that's a big range. But, there are nice places to eat where you can, for two people dining out for $100, you can still get like a really nice meal and a special meal. It just depends on what your perspective is on that.
Most people eat at Lazy Betty on the anniversary of their first date. Thank you.
And yes, Keith, it's called Chick-fil-A. Yeah. All right, last question.
Okay. To piggyback on Keith's comment, when I was in my 20s, I would always take a girl to Jalisco's at Peachtree Battle for $15, and if they wanted to go out with me again, then that was good. I can't get away with that now. Anyway, my question pertains to when I've gone to several events where they've had catered things or whatever, restaurants, whatever, at the end of the night, there's a ton of food left over. And all anybody needs to do is go along Capitol Avenue and see all the, the homeless and whatnot. But every single time I've asked about this, they've always said that there's some sort of litigious issue. What can you guys do to, to cross that hurdle?
I don't want to get out of my depth a little bit here. There are liability issues there when you're handing out food and things along those. You want to be careful. It's a deep dive into what those kind of hurdles are, what jurisdiction they are. You're right. I mean, you can go downtown and you see, we host events at the freight depot down over across the Capitol, and we'll have boxes of food left over, and we try to send them home with the staff and things like that, folks who need it. But then you walk 10 feet and you see 500 people waiting in that church across from the freight depot who need it. I think, frankly, that's something that as an association, as an industry as a whole, maybe as a state, we can look better at finding ways, hey, let's move some of these barriers out of the way and make it easier. And that's on us to do that research and do that to figure out what that answer is, because you're right. There's got to be a better way, and there's got to be, and maybe it's just, hey, there's some communication that needs to be had with the caterers or with the restaurants and say, hey, get it out the door, give it to these folk, don't just throw it away. But I do know, liability issues are at play.
Bill Bowling's done a lot of great things in this city, and one of the things he did was go to the restaurant, or to the hotels in downtown, Midtown, and Buckhead, and said, you have these big banquets and events, and you have a lot of food that goes unused, and he was able to plug some of that in to the food bank and close that gap. That was some more of Bill's magic. So.
Well, I think that's apropos to finish the program on that question. Thank you for that call to action. I'll remind newer members that during COVID, where this program started, this club mobilized, thanks to Bill and others, to implement food security, and we made a big difference. So Fred, we're looking for your green star, Fred, at some point, right, for us to support.
With another restaurant.
Yeah. So Scott, Fred, Aaron, thank you for what you do for our community. Thank you for your time. William, you've got a new honor, the most influential moderator of all time. Can add that to your list. Thank you for your time in putting this together. Just a quick reminder, next week, of course, we're giving thanks, and there will be no Rotary program, but on Monday, December the 2nd, Mayor Andre will be back to give us the state of the city, and we will be getting a special deep dive on our early learning educators program. So please reserve your seats in advance. We anticipate a lot of demand for people to be here. So with that, let's acknowledge our panel and give them thanks. The meeting is adjourned.